And this is how people traditionally have sat on sofas, which is all in a line, focusing on one focal point, which would have been the fireplace, then the radiogram, and then the television screen, right? And that's what people have done for hundreds of years, right? But of course, we don't live like that anymore. We live like this. So we're not all looking at the same thing anymore. And you don't need to have your sofa rammed against the wall, all looking at one thing in a line, because you're not looking at one thing anymore. One person's on Deliveroo, ordering their takeaway meal that they're going to eat on the sofa. The other person is doing their homework. Somebody else is on Instagram, right?
You often talk about designers and say that they're rock stars, but you're a real rock star.
Disco, not rock.
Disco, okay. All right, fantastic. Say a little bit, if you can, just very quickly about your unique path to becoming a designer.
Accidental, really. I had no idea what design was, but I just had a motorbike accident, stopped my music career. The bass player that replaced me is now in Pink Floyd, played for Madonna, played for Michael Jackson, so that could have been me.
That could have been you.
This is just to show, I guess we're crashing back down to the ground after having talked about artificial intelligence, United Nations goals, and big development projects, and back to kind of the domestic scale. Chairs are great because for designers, although somebody did say earlier, we don't need any more chairs, they're a great typology for any designer because they're human-sized, right? So I designed this series of chairs called Fat, and they're called Fat for an obvious reason. They've got these inflated comfort parts because I really don't sit still, which is what this kind of is talking about. I like to sit poorly.
Right.
You'll see, during the talk.
I'm the same. Yeah.
What I noticed with these chairs is that you could actually make them into love seats, and that kind of suited conversation better than just sitting side by side. So I thought I'd make a sofa, which took into account a bit the modern age. Nice to see Kim Kardashian there endorsing the fatness of the chair and her advertising her Spanx line. And I think the name Fat is really a celebration of more voluptuousness and more, more comfort and more generosity, which is what upholstery needs. So these chairs are incredibly simple. There's nothing to them at all. And sometimes, in design, you want to do less rather than more. All they're doing is inflating those comfort parts. So like I say, a celebration of fatness. And I think what I'd noticed really was more to do with how people are living. And I wanted to do a couch, or a sofa, as we call it in England. And this is how people traditionally have sat on sofas, which is all in a line, focusing on one focal point, which would have been the fireplace, then the radiogram, and then the television screen, right? And that's what people have done for hundreds of years, right? But of course, we don't live like that anymore. We live like this. So we're not all looking at the same thing anymore. And you don't need to have your sofa rammed against the wall, all looking at one thing in a line, because you're not looking at one thing anymore. One person's on Deliveroo, ordering their takeaway meal that they're going to eat on the sofa. The other person is doing their homework. Somebody else is on Instagram, right? So this is really a story about how, how even your domestic objects change according to society. And I think designers can always work a bit better when things change. And so this is just an observation of mine, that it's better to have a sofa that points in all directions, really. So it needs to be kind of simple. And so the idea was just taking that extreme fatness and making it into the simplest possible modules, child's play, if you like, and trying to find a way of being able to put them back to front and side by side, and really bringing the sofa to the middle of the room as a three-dimensional object. So that's the result, really, which is that you're doing, like with the kitchen that used to be rammed against the wall, then the kitchen island became the thing where everybody collects, and that means that you can really use the sofa in the same way. You just put it in the middle of the room, and you're all facing different directions, but you're still communing, because I think people still want to be together.
It's great. Just looking at those makes me feel a lot more relaxed. Kind of wish we had one on stage. We could sit any way we wanted, right?
Really, yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, those are marvelous, and they're really kind of signature, like your other great design lines. They have a kind of clarity of vision to them, a kind of simplicity to them that just makes sense. And they look terrific. Really fabulous. So let's talk about people who try to imitate this signature approach and vision that you bring to all of your different projects. Because I know this is something that has kind of irritated you for many, many years. Describe the problem for us.
Well, maybe I'll just talk about a specific lamp and its journey, really. And this is what these slides are about. You know, I was on a not-for-profit trip organized by the British Council to Jaipur in India, where they wanted to find new typologies for the really skilled craftsmen of Jaipur that are gradually losing their skills, particularly the ones making these amazing water pots that are used in all of the villages in India to carry water, because all of these water pots are being replaced by much cheaper plastic equivalents. Yeah. And so that kind of heritage is changing. And here again, in terms of under-designing rather than over-designing, here was just the idea of kind of turning the thing upside down and making a light out of it. So the shapes are roughly the same. You know, that thing of the hands beating that you see here is kind of celebrated. And some of the curves are just incorporated into a lighting object, which gave, you know, maybe 20 people now moved to a metalwork city called Moradabad, you know, a chance to make things that people were consuming again, right? So these have been very successful for us, and were really our first hit when we started the label maybe 20 years ago. But, you know, as you go to buy them, this is what you get on eBay and various other sites is, you know, vast amounts of not Tom Dixon beat lights, right? So this is a typical page online showing hundreds of copies. And we've done an audit online, and we're talking really about 800,000 units available now, at a quarter of the price of the lamps that we can sell. So it becomes a bit of a problem. You know, some people say you should be flattered, you know, and of course I am immensely, and, you know, I borrowed the shapes from elsewhere anyway, so, you know, who am I to complain, right? But what do you do about that as a designer? Well, not a lot, because, you know, effectively, legal systems, this is an Australian website, if you put replica Tom Dixon before the name, you're allowed to sell it in Australia.
So as long as they explicitly say, hey, this is a fake,
so
they can sell it.
They're calling out the fake and authorizing the sale of it in Australia. I can't do anything about that. And you know, the aesthetic is actually very kind of replicable, and even IKEA, you know, do a bowl which is strangely reminiscent of the lamp, right? But what was kind of nice was the next step, which was the hacker community gets online and says, well, if you want a Tom Dixon lamp for $18, not $100, buy a bowl at IKEA, drill a hole in it, and hang it upside down, and this is the result. Not bad.
This is a famous hack. Yeah, it's great.
So, you know,
not so great for you.
I love the way the thing is borrowed and then re-borrowed again, and you know, there's ways of getting the look at a much lower price. So I just thought, well, what is it that I can do against the copies? Well, I can't do anything about the intellectual property. I can get people, if they use our photographs, actually photography is more protected than shape in legal systems around the world. But what I really want to do is copy the copyists. So my plan now, which we've just launched, is to do unbeaten. Do you get the joke? So unbeaten, meaning that I take out the beating, I make it completely smooth. Instead of hiding the aluminium, because I make mine out of brass, the copyists make theirs out of aluminum. I would celebrate the aluminium, and I can now make these at half the price of my original. And I've got a completely new aesthetic, which is a more industrial, shiny aesthetic, which I think rejuvenates the lamp altogether. So in the end, you know, I'm in a position where I've copied the copyists better, in my view, and reduced my pricing by 50%, which I think is about right.
They're still beautiful, though. I mean, is this working? Is this deterring?
Well, it's only just launched. I'll tell you next year. Okay, these things take a while to bed in.
Lovely.
So yeah, I mean, I think that there's there a kind of coping strategy, if you like, which has suited, you know, my impatience anyway, and given me a brand new aesthetic.
It's great. Yeah, those are really nice. And so these are not out yet. They're coming out.
No, they're just out. Just out.
Yeah,
at the moment. Yeah. So good reason not to buy the copies, I think. Yeah.
So let's tackle this third topic that we were going to.
Yeah. So I think, you know, so I talked obviously about design being influenced by changes in society, but even better is when there's changes in technology. And what's been amazing, you know, over the last few years for any lighting designer, because that's the majority of what we do, is the revolution moving electrical lighting, incandescence, to electronic lighting, which is LEDs.
Right.
And LEDs have been amazing from a sustainability point of view because of the reduction in power usage and heat loss, you know. And, you know, the other thing which I love about, you know, the modern world, which is hidden, is the circuit board, which is the most beautiful piece of design, which goes completely hidden in any mobile phone, in any car. You have a circuit board in a refrigerator now, but they're largely just masked from view. So this is just a project about trying to celebrate the LED and try and think of a new way of illuminating. It's kind of interesting even here where, you know, you've got the conventional lighting up here, right, neoclassical, right. You've got the spotlights all running on LEDs, and then you've got the screens, which are completely separate, which are all running on LEDs. We've got a lot of light in here. But I wanted to kind of celebrate the raw elements of electronic lighting. And so this was an idea to try and just use the circuit board without covering it at all. So the circuit board becomes a unit, a module, like a building block, uncovered, unmasked, and just raw with its LEDs on top. And with this, in fact, with two of them, a square one and a round one, just like with Morse code, you can kind of build a whole language of lighting. So using what's normally a track system, so you can just plug the things in, you're in a position really to deconstruct how you illuminate a space and think completely differently about, you know, how you light things. And instead of having what we're seeing here, which is light sources everywhere, you're kind of able to build as an architect or a designer something using my kit. So I'm no longer the designer, I'm the producer of a building kit, if you like, for other people to make their own lighting solutions, right?
There's a kind of just, you know, elegant simplicity to these. Again, it's sort of dots and dashes, right?
Yeah, so it is like, you know, like I say, the sort of the simplistic kids building a Lego kit effectively, where really you can just completely change the way that you illuminate. So this column, for instance, uses something like 8,000 LEDs. So if you turn it up, I mean, it's like having a sun inside your room, and it kind of blasts out a huge amount of light. But you can turn them right down and make it almost like a sunset as well. So there's and then, you know, obviously with the other ways, you can just like use them as skirting board, or you can use them as a screen, or even make a sun on the wall like you've got in the center there.
And what's this called?
It's called Code.
Code, okay.
Get it?
I get it. Wonderful.
So I think, you know, the net result is really to try and say, well, you know, wouldn't it be nice to actually, you know, because as designers, you're always trying to make the perfect item, the finished item that you never touch again, the icon. But I kind of prefer the idea now of just providing, you know, more possibilities than I could think of myself. You know, and that's something I'm pursuing also in furniture with, like, for instance, this project, which is just about using one extrusion of brass and giving, and this is my studio, everybody making a piece of furniture just out of this one very recognizable unit of brass tubing, right? So I think I'll evolve from being a designer of objects to try and be a bit more a designer of systems. Yeah. We've only got 25 seconds to go now.
It's just amazing. You know, how do you get inspiration for these kind of things? Do you have a kind of standard process for coming up?
No, I think always each piece has a different narrative and a different story, but the obsessions remain the same. It's always about because I started off welding and then became a designer, I like how you make things, the craft techniques or the factory techniques or increasingly the new digital techniques. And I love the material, just converting something raw into something of value is something which I've always thought was like alchemy. It's like you're transforming, a piece of rubbish into gold, which is how I started with scrap metal.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the things that I think makes your work so unique and relevant is that, as we're doing more and more things on screens and with LEDs, your work is very tangible. It's very, concrete and edgy. So thanks very much, Tom. We appreciate you showing us your latest inspirations, and we hope you'll come back.
Thank you very much.